computer. One of the things I wanted to do was go over different products that we sell and do the most wanted thing, but the most useless thing is talk about technical products. And the reason it's the most useless is no champion has ever said, I finally became a champion when I finally understood the product because someone taught me. But we still want to entertain and make sure, hey, we have some material for people to go through. And we definitely don't want people to be confused. We've had careers destroyed because they didn't understand product. And so it's much more of a protective your career and a protecting the client. But most people who want to learn product, they go to the company website and they read every brochure. And the brochures are very clear. This is how this works. This is how this works. And they're also not that interesting, the brochures. So that's one of the problems with the brochure. But if you go to a marketing material on any website, we just got available to Empire CI. And so that's cool. And so Empire's got really good material that doesn't require a login. So I send my new people there and say, hey, if you want to learn, read this first, because why go to university if you've never read a book, right? We're going to jump in. I debate whether we should have questions as we go through, or we save all the questions to the end. Because if we do questions as we go through, we lose momentum, and I lose control and you lose momentum. But if we do questions to the end, you might forget your question, and we might not build on the previous piece. And so it is about 3 or 4 different parts. We'll stop, we'll ask questions. The main concern, one, is to finish on time, respect your guys' time. And the other concern is to be in a position where you guys have a better understanding of how to build and sell the stuff. And so if you have a question, just put it in the chat, or just say, hey, I got a question. I don't know how this works, don't know how that works. And I might defer answering it. So this is our agenda here. One second, I lost my cameras. This is our agenda, and we've accomplished how term insurance works, how whole life insurance works, and now universal life. We're going to discuss how to construct for durability, how to look at it versus the TFSA and mutual funds, and then a little bit about how taxation. I have never met a licensed professional. Actually, wait a minute. I have never met a licensed professional who's not an MD or SMD who knows how tax works. Most associates don't know, but they did know when they did their LQP, and then all of a sudden they forgot. But we're gonna discuss how that works a little bit. And in business, there is a school of thought. By the way, this is a quote by the founder of Bank of America. Later on, it was the biggest, most all-consuming bank in the Western world. And so the United States government and antitrust laws forced them to separate. So Bank of America became Bank of America, and Transamerica as their insurance arm. And they were built to serve the average person. So they weren't an investment bank. They were a normal human beings bank. And serving the needs of the consumer is the only legitimate business that exists. Napoleon Hill says, do more than you get paid to do. So sometimes there's this mentality that says, in business, we should get paid more than we do. But the reality in business is we should do more than we get paid. We should come to work on Sundays. We should come to work on Saturdays. We should fight like crazy to serve our consumer. And at the end of the day and at the end of the career, our durability in business is only as good as what the client pays us. If they stop paying for their stuff, we don't get paid. If people lose belief in what we do, they can't make enough phone calls. If people are nervous about if this is good or not, they don't call the people they love the most. They call the people they don't know the most, right? And with insurance and investment, sometimes it's easy to confuse a client and they buy a big policy and it's not the absolute best. And so we always want to be careful how we build it and make sure the client understands it. And it's very similar to a doctor. If you go to a doctor, I assume doctors are on commission and they make money when they sell drugs, but they try, I assume if they're not corrupt, to sell you drugs based on how much commission they make. They try to sell you the drug that is best for you, right? And eventually they make money too. In the 80s, doctors could get rich like crazy because maybe they didn't have a lot of regulations, but now maybe there's a little more regulations for us too. Here's the proper sales path. We're going to review this. And by the way, I think about this when I'm discussing with somebody. I had a appointment with Sharon yesterday, and we talked a little bit about values and principles of the client, a little bit about concepts, no strategy, and we just showed a little bit of a product just to get a taste of a, hey, it's not ridiculous, just so they're not, what they think. But we got to build it up, and trust is all built down here. If they don't trust you, it's because of the concept, the values that you hold out. And, it's hard. It's difficult to build trust with people. Some people find it easy. Some people find it tough. But so we want to evaluate which side we're talking about. If they're not confused about your values, they're not confused about the concept you're teaching, they're not confused about the strategy, they will buy whatever product you recommend. And we have to choose the right product for them. So let's go example. And by the way, I'm assuming this is being recorded. I'm assuming I'm teaching to people who've been in the industry. They've read every brochures on the stuff. They passed their LQP and they know what they're talking about there. And they have they have a decent understanding, and we're just sharpening things up. Now, if it's brand new and we lose you, I'm okay if you're brand new. But if I lose Carol, then it's a problem. I say, hey, Carol, we can't lose you because you already know all this stuff. But some concepts that we can show a client and say, if I think a universal life is the best for the client, here's the concepts I can sell. So some of you are taking notes. The one bucket concept goes like this. I just draw a bucket. And I say a universal life is like a universal joint on a car. You know a universal joint? Which way does it turn? Anyway, that's why it's universal. So what it means is you can put the whole universe in this policy. You can put term insurance in. You can put level insurance in. You can put 1-year insurance. You can put critical illness. You can put disability. You can put terminal illness. You can put disability. You can put anything you want in here. But whatever you put in, for example, if I put in here, I have some life insurance. I have some critical illness. I have some disability insurance. And then I also have extra money. So every time I add an insurance in, the cost comes out. There's a leak in the bucket. So let's say my cost is $100 a month for all this stuff separately. What I can do is I can pay $200 a month. By the way, this is how I sell the UL. I can pay $200 a month. And that's my favorite concept. I can put $200 now. Now, the extra money here, in month 1, when I show you the illustration, there's $100 of extra money and $100 leaked out of the bucket. Now, that money is going to leak out of the bucket no matter what. So after 10 years, you put in $12,000 extra, right? $100. You get interest on that money, so you can have that money invested. If you stop paying, what happens is you can't pay for a year, extra money, then pays the cost. Your money starts leaking out of the bucket. So you're trying to fill the bucket with water, and the government says you can't put too much money in, but you got to pay your cost. But that's how it works. How much cost, how many good things are in the bucket, and how much do you pay? And you have to pay more than you get. Then it builds up cash. That's what I show to the client. If you pass away, you get what you put in. You get anything you claim on, and if you cancel, you get your money back minus tax. Any questions about this concept? Does this make sense? No. By the way, every concept has flaws. Okay, when you see this, you're like, wait a minute, that's misleading. That's why it's a concept, right?
Yeah,
So,
I can't understand the 100 outside the bucket.
good. Okay, thank you for asking. Let me redraw it. I have a bucket here, and in my bucket, there's a leak. There's a hole in the bucket, right? If I put insurance in here, and my insurance costs $100 per month, and I pay $200 per month, what happens is it gets split. Cash value is 100, cost of insurance leaves the bucket. It's not in the policy anymore. That goes to the insurance company to cover the cost. So the value of the policy is $100, and then I have my life insurance. If I pay $300, that's better. If I pay just 100, there's no cash value. So the value of this hole in the bucket is if I stop paying, now I get only one, my cash value then leaks out and it's gone. Does that help? Does that make sense? So all universal life has costs. Some of those costs can be paid up. Some of them are paid forever. It depends what the cost is and what type of policy it is. X-curve is the most common way to sell universal life. What we say is this. You have two needs. You have a responsibility need, and you have to build wealth. So if your responsibility, let's say, is 500,000, and you need 500,000 of life insurance over time, as you pay more and you save more money, so this is your cash value, as you save more, you need to save money. And let's say you have 300,000. Let's say you have 200,000 of cash saved in the policy, 200,000 in the bucket. You're actually buying only 300,000 of insurance because your total is still 500,000. Now, if you put 400,000 in cash, you're only buying 100,000 of coverage. And once you have $500,000 cash, you have essentially no coverage and no cost. So if you put $500,000 into a $500,000 policy, there's no cost. And so ideally, you want to put as much money in as you have insurance. And so when you buy an insurance policy, what you pay, some of it goes to insurance and some of it goes to cash. Now, if you just pay for insurance, you never offset. That's X-curve. You pay for two, and if you get old, you have money. If you die young, you have insurance. One of the flaws with this is when you get old, you have no insurance because you've paid it off with cash. So another concept here is rent to own. This is widely used in the industry. I don't use it. I don't like it. Either way, you own a concept, but they'd say, here's how it would work. If you rent, you have a low premium. If you own, you have a high premium. But if you rent, you have an increasing premium. But if you own it, you have a level payment. So it's like this forever, but if you rent it, it goes like this. One of the reasons I don't like it is if I buy a term, it's like $40. If I buy permanent, it's like $400. So it's not fair. When I rent and own a house, rent is like $1,000 in Winnipeg. Owning a house is like $1,200. So you're not like getting It's not quite the same, but this is common. And I don't, if a client knows nothing about insurance and they say, would you like to rent insurance or own it? The client will always say own it. And they can be walked into where they should be. Choosing what the client buys and choosing a concept to help them buy what's good for them are two different worlds. We're not here to help choose what the client buys. That'll be later on. But this is if you think, hey, they should own something permanent. This is one way to show a concept. Insured retirement strategy is a lot of our competitors use this. I personally do not. I personally do not use it with UL, and I think it only works if a client has a corporation, has their RSP full, and has their TFSA full, and wants to fund this from a corporation, and they also have very good credit and are very, very comfortable borrowing money. In fact, they think borrowing money is sophisticated. Can you believe that's what I don't think it's sophisticated. I think you borrow and pay it back. But so what insured retirement strategy is, it says what you're going to do is you're going to buy a universal life policy and you're going to pay the maximum. And then later in life, you can borrow it out. Kind of like buying a house and paying it off, and you can borrow it out. And I want to show real quick a concept. The insured retirement, we're not going to spend too much time on it. In fact, most of the times I ran into it, I've replaced it. So that's why I'm always a little nervous. Avari loves the IRP. This is the IRP strategy. There is no product called IRP. That product doesn't exist. And so they call it an insured retirement strategy. Here's who it's for. This is the brochure, okay? They say, chances are, if you're looking forward to retirement, which means you're getting wealthy, if you've reached the contribution limit on your RRSP and your TFSA and still need to save more, your choices may be limited. Without the shelter of your RRSP and TFSA, additional investments in non-registered investments like mutual fund stocks and bonds can be highly taxed. So here's a quick question. If you have an open investment, is it taxed more favorably than UL if you're going to use it for spending? Or is it taxed less favorably? Assuming it's non-corporate. Here's the truth. If it's a growth fund in equity, where you're getting capital gains, or a dividend fund where you're getting a dividend, it's taxed better than income. UL's taxed as income. So if I want to compete on tax, I want to compete in the fixed income space. So a UL with fixed income will be better taxed than an open money with fixed income, bonds and fixed income. The problem with the UL and fixed income, it doesn't perform like you would wish it to perform. But so he says now there is a way around your financial plans with a tax effective strategy. This is if you want to send money to the next generation, but all brochures say TFSA should be full and RSP should be full. One of the reasons is if you miss a payment, you lose everything in the first decade. And or you lose a lot of it, maybe not everything, it might be too strong. And so, get a comment, Jeff? Any questions about what they call IRP?
I have a question, Daniel. When you go to take the money out, just give them a quick idea of how it would work.
I got a slide for that.
Okay, fair enough.
So here, let's say I want to build a policy. I want to do, I can do a level cost or a YRT. What I can do is I can do YRT for like 10 years, and then I can switch it to level. And so we call it a YRT to level. This is the most efficient way to do a policy. That way I get about 10 years of cash building up, but I don't have the long-term renewal. And so when we're picking a premium, we should pick a premium that can be converted to level within 10 years. And so if my, this might be too technical, but I'm risking it. Some of you might like it. So what I want to do is I say, if this is a level cost today, and in 10 years, the level cost is more, and I get to choose my premium in a YRT, I want to choose this premium so I can switch up to the level cost. I'll show you an illustration later, possibly, if we have time. But this one is very commonly used. And what it means is this. I have mom and dad. They're married. They got a kid. This guy's name is maybe William. They say, what we want to do is we want to save money in an account that we control, like a trust. But we don't want to pay $4,500 to open a trust. And we don't want a trustee to manage it. So we want to fill this policy. And then instead of letting it go to our kid, we want to go to our grandkid. We want to save for multi-generations. So we say we don't trust our kid. Maybe he's an addict. Maybe he's on welfare. Maybe he's on, maybe he can't handle money. So we're going to build money and we're going to send that money to the next generation. And we don't want to use a trust because it costs a lot of money. And a universal life costs $10 a month. There's a policy fee, $10 a month. At some companies there's no policy fee. So that's what it would look like. But that's a trust alternative. You're skipping a generation, and then they get a lump sum or they get an annuity. And I think it's a great strategy. Any questions about some of these concepts? We're good? There's 3 parts to a universal life. Let's go a little more technical here. Besides stuff.
Hey, Daniel, the question on the YRT and level, can you explain that again, the previous page?
I sure can. I'll explain it in 2 slides, so you'll get it right away. I'll spend a little more time on it. So here, cost of insurance. When you have a bucket of universal life, there is costs. You get to choose how much you pay and when you pay by what you put in. There's cash and there's premium. There's recommended premium and there's funded premium. Recommended premium and funded premium are usually different. Funded premium is usually less than recommended. So if they start off at $300 a month, they usually lower it. And so if they lower it, it affects everything. I'll show you that right away. So cost of insurance, there's 2 types of costs that are very common in the UL. You can also put term inside, but there's level cost, which looks like a term to 100. And then there's 1-year insurance cost. And so if we have 1-year insurance, every year the insurance goes up. Level looks like this. In fact, this is the exact costs. I got a T to 100, which is the yellow. The brown is a level UL. The level UL costs more than the T to 100 because there's administration costs because you could overfund it. A T to 100 cannot be overfunded. So there's no room to put extra money in. And then the YRT cost. So here, I might want to buy a YRT. So it's much cheaper. It costs about $1,000 a year versus $5,000 a year. So for 10 years, I pay $1,000 a year, or I pay $5,000, and I save about $40,000 in cash. 10 years times 4,000. No. 10 years times 4,000 is 40,000. Now I switch my YRT to level. So I'm no longer taking the risk of having this crazy insurance, but I did get a chance to build some cash. That's what I mean by do a YRT to level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you for clarifying that. The other question is, do they have a choice to do 10 years? Or is it something that's kind of like the UL kind of offers it, or it's just like they can do it for maybe 5 years and put as much funding into it and then change it? Is it kind of like any time they can change it?
Anytime they want before a certain age. Sometimes at 80 or 90, you can't do it anymore. But in the contract, they'll say you can switch it up to age 75, 80, something like that. When you're old, you can't do it as much, depending on the firm. But under 65, you can do it anytime. You can do YRT for 1 year and then switch it in a year. But when I look at these costs of insurance, term goes up in the future. Level term does not. But if someone's, for example, doing an insured retirement plan, do they want to pay $50,000 in annual costs if they live to age 90? No. So it looks good when you're young, but it does not look good when you're old, because it is still term, right? Terms means it renews, not it terminates. We call it terminate because it's terminating insurance, but term is short term, right? So there's two types of insurance. Mostly we're going to talk about YRT. Most of the policies in the field are YRT. When you go to high net worth policies, they're all level or whole life. Only, in my experience, poor people buy YRT. Wealthy people buy whole life or level, and depending how they structure it, and depending who's selling it. But it looks better to buy this policy than this policy. But one of them might not make it. So we're going to show you that right away. So that's the cost of insurance. We get to choose. You want the cheap one now, expensive later, or do you want level cost? And then the fund value, when you pay for extra money, that can offset your fund value. So there's two different ones. We have account value protector or increasing death benefit. Every insurance company calls it something else. Or you have level death benefit or fund value offset. Here's all that means. This is right from the Equitable brochure. If I have, let's say, $500,000 of coverage and I add extra money, that money goes to more death benefit. A lot of people have Primerica or a lot of anti-permanent insurance. I'm anti-confusion, not anti-permanent insurance. It just so happens that permanent insurance is the most confusing. You get your fund, you get what your insurance is. Let's say you put 200 grand in cash, you get 700 grand when you die.
Daniel, your screen is blurry.
Is it blurry for everyone?
Looks good to me.
I'm sorry, Ruth.
Now it's better.
Here, you have your basic protection. We call that the net amount at risk. When you run an illustration, you can see the NAAR, or you have total death benefit or face amount. Your face amount drops as you put more cash value in, and you pay for face amount. So if this person puts in, let me change my color here. If this person puts in 100 grand cash, they have $400,000 face amount, $100,000 cash, total death benefit $500,000. People say you don't get both. That's true, because you pay for less. So you're only paying for $400,000, so you only get $400,000 life insurance. This is the person who doesn't believe in life insurance but they buy it anyways because they're responsible adults, and then they can pay it off. It's a buy term invested difference. If someone believes in buy term invested difference, they believe in this. Except if you don't put enough money in, you don't offset your costs. So usually YRT is built this way because you have a chance to offset. And usually level is built this way because you want to have that extra money. That's typical. But nothing's typical in insurance. What's you just got to understand the two different options. But this is the X curve model. To do the bonus or not to do the bonus? So, insurance companies have a bonus. And stop share. I want to show you the bonus. Is that cool? Let me share my screen. I did not pull up the bonus sheet. So I gotta look it up. Give me a second here. Who wants to do a bonus on the insurance? Who likes the bonus or doesn't like it? Do you guys know?
Do explain, that's new to
You
me.
can't exceed your mute.
Okay, so I go to Equitable and I go to Client Guide. So what I can do is I can show you an illustration. So this is, here I have a bonus version and a low fees version. If I structure my interest rate here, let's say I want to do 8% in the bonus version, or if I do low fees, it says blah, 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 it gives me a warning. And now it puts my interest rate at 9.2. So low fees, I get 9.2, but when I do a bonus, it looks like I get less. But you get a 1.25 bonus. So does the client want a 1.25 bonus? Let me show you here. So this is the brochure. Here's your bucket. You have your premium minus your premium tax goes into the bucket. Out of that goes your monthly charges, and then hopefully the bucket fills up. And here's some explanations. Here's your account value protector. And here is the bonus. So if you use the bonus, you get a fee of, let's call it 3%, or 1.75% if you sell the bonus. But over here, you get no bonus, no fee. So do you want to pay 3% to get a bonus, or do you want to pay 1.5 to get no bonus? And so, and you only get the bonus if the market goes up. It's more complicated, but here, let me draw it out. I assume if you want to know how bonus works, we just go read the brochure. I want to keep us moving. But here's essentially how the bonus works. If you're in a GIC, they don't want to give you extra money and market it to the public because the funds outside the UL have to be the same as the UL. So they'll give you an extra 1.25. But if you put it in the market, they'll also give you 1.25, but they'll charge you 3%. So if you're in a bonus version, you actually lose money unless you're in a guaranteed GIC. So it's only for a corporate UL that should be in a bonus. If you meet someone who's in a bonus version, the advisor that set that up was an idiot. But when you illustrate it, I can run an illustration at 5. It'll illustrate 6.25. But that's not fair because what the client sees is 6.25, but they got to get like 8.5. The bonus costs money. So bonus means you lose money. We always want to do no bonus. Should be the other way. We always want to do no bonus. And then there's some management fees, UL fees, and surrender fees. If I look at, I'm just wondering if they have it here. No, they don't have it here on my sheet. But there are surrender fees, and we should know what they are. I was talking to Jeff. I know that some companies have surrender fees. 100% of what you put in for the first 5 years is most times surrender, depending where you go, depending how much you put in. So it's not meant to be canceled in the first 5 years. But there is exit fees, unlike TFSA maybe has max 5%. But we want to make sure it's built right. Any questions about this stuff? I know it might be confusing, but if you read the brochure, it's not less confusing.
Daniel, I'm curious when the bonus works for corporate people.
Oh, because if you're in a GIC, there's no bonus fee. So you get the bonus, but don't pay the admin fee. And you wouldn't want to build a UL and put the money in GICs unless you're in a corporate position where if you have money in a corporation, you have retained earnings, you got to pay tax on that. You can only earn 50 grand a year in retained earnings, or you lose your small business tax credit or your small business status. And so a corporate account, if someone has a corporation, if they invest in the corporation, it's taxed at the highest rate if it's unearned income. So they can then go buy a universal life and they can take money here and they can hide it in here and fill it up. The cost of the insurance doesn't matter because if it's tax-free. But if they pull it out and buy it personally, they got to pay tax when they pull it out. So they can keep it all together. And but if in a personal UL, it's hard to do GICs. It's because it doesn't perform long term. But a corporation might say, "Hey, we're going to make a lot of money long term anyways, so we're okay with that." The strategy changes. Does that answer your question?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
When dealing with a client, usually we say, "Hey, if you want a UL, your risk tolerance is through the roof, so we're going to put you in equity." That's the way it works. But with a corporation, we have to look at the risk tolerance and how much money they're putting in. So, any other questions? That's a great question of why it works. It's the tax status in a corporation.
Yeah, I have a question here, Daniel. Why will I do this in a UL rather than just have a whole life for the same use case?
Oh, sometimes they want to fill it in much faster. They want to pay. They want to fill in like 10-year pay, so they can get money in right away, much quicker. And some people hate guarantees. They say, "I don't want guaranteed. I'm gonna fund it for 10 years, and I'm gonna sell my corporation." Whole life doesn't work as well that way. So the cost of insurance is cheaper for about 20 years, 30 years. So I personally understand the question, and I think a whole life is better priced. Yeah. I don't know, Michael. I would do the whole life. Sometimes client doesn't understand whole life, so they got to buy what they understand. So here's some of the risks. Start. Some of the risks: future cost of insurance versus available fund value. So let me see here. If I have had previously opened up a bunch of PDFs, I lost them. So let me change this. We have, let me show you an illustration. By the way, you can't show more than 3 or 4 illustrations to a client or you'll confuse them. So it's hard, right? Unless it's just a lot of numbers. So here's our standard illustration we're going to look at. And we want to know, this is a universal life. We want to know the style of insurance. Whenever you look at a policy, I want to know what type of insurance, level or YRT. So this is YRT. And the premium payment is $960 plus, so the reference premium is $960. The minimum is $396 and the max is $5,000, but we're going to pay recommended premium $1,000 a year. So it's very, very, very reasonable. And from year 1, we're going to pay $1,000. So here's how it works. We're running this at 5%. IA gives you a discount on your management fee of 0.75. It doesn't cost you anything. So their cost of investment is lower than a mutual fund in the same fund and much lower than a seg fund. But here we have $1,000 goes into the policy. The reason they give you a 0.75 bonus and it shows up at 0.79 is because it's a discount on the MER, so you don't have to pay tax on the MER. Every time there's a cost of tax, you don't have to pay that tax. That's why it looks at it on number. So this client puts in $1,000, 400 and change goes to cost, 600 goes to cash value. The next year, 400 goes to cost, 1,300 goes to cash value. There's some fees when they're not intended to be canceled. And the insurance is 1,500. If I change the look different columns here, here is the insurance, $1,000 goes in. Your death benefit is 150,000. Your face amount is 149,360 plus your funds adds up to 150. So as the cash value builds in year 10, we've put in 10,000. Our cash value is 8,000. And then we're paying for less insurance. So our cost of insurance should go down. After 30 years, they have 40,000 cash. They're buying only 100,000 of insurance. So it's only 2/3 of what they originally bought. If they die, they get 150, and they put in 30,000. So that looks good. They put in 30,000, cash value is 38, and they have a death benefit. If we keep going, you can see the cash value is 56,000 here. It peaks around 56,000 at age 79. So their insurance is only 93 face amount, and the death benefit is 150. See how they offset each other? You get both. You're just paying for less insurance. The more money you put in, the less insurance you're buying. And then what happens is the cost of insurance is going up. So your death, now your cash value starts paying for it. At age 90, your cash value goes down to 9,000. Your insurance amount goes up. And at age 90 at IA, there's no more cost. So now your cash value continues to build. But that's a universal life minimum funded. Or normal funded. A little bit above the recommendation. Here's one of the problems. If I skip a year, this is the exact same policy, ran at 5%. So here, we're going to pay premium. Sorry for the scrolling. Here we go. So in year 4, this client says, can I skip a year? We say, hey, listen, you have $2,000 in your fund. You can skip a year, and that $2,000 will be deducted the cost of insurance, and that's it. So you pay $1,000 less than the policy I just showed you. Just 1 year. They don't re-put that money back in. They just say, okay, I'm going to continue on. And so there's $1,000 less put in. Now, in 30 years, there's 33,000. Let me go back to the second way I showed you there. By the way, whatever number you want to show the client, you can show them, whatever they're curious about. So in year 30, they have 33,000, a little bit less, still 150,000, but now this thing peaks out around 40,000. They're about $10,000 less at age 71. So 40,000 doesn't offset the insurance as much. And now that fund starts paying the insurance. And at age 86, there's only 3,000 in the fund. And their cost of insurance is based on 150,000. So what happens at age 87? Can someone tell me? Oh, you're muted. You're telling me.
It lapses.
It lapses. Will the agent that sold it be licensed? Not anymore, right? They're retired too. will Canadian law allow you to sue an unlicensed agent after they've canceled their E&O in a civil suit? They will sue you. Now, everything was done proper, but they felt they were explained one thing, and if that policy lapses, they will take this to court. It'll be a class action suit, and if you go to class action, and all of our Supreme Court cases in Canada are televised, recorded, you can go to their case, and the class action usually wins. And they got to pay back. But this will lapse. So they say, I have permanent, but it's not permanent, it's term. Because if your fund value is only 14,000, you can't afford to pay the 150. I'm terrified of this stuff, where a client thinks it's permanent, but it's actually term. So if we do a pay to age 65, client says, okay, I'm just going to pay to age 65. No problem. What happens is you pay accumulate annual premiums. Oh, never mind. I didn't run that one. But if the client stops paying, it doesn't work. This is the not paid age 65. This is if the client earns 4.6% instead of 5%. So this one here, the client earned 5%. What if the client only earned 4%? If the client only earns 4%, but they can never miss a payment, at age 83, policy lapses. So the cash value at age 83 is, this is not borrowing money out, okay? When you borrow money out, you blow the thing up. When you borrow money out of a UL, you can only borrow half of your cash value, and you have to move the other half to GIC. So now you're not getting 4%, you're getting 1.1. And so it changes the rules when you borrow the money out. But that's what I refer to as fund, the future cost of insurance and available funds. If you don't put enough money in it, you got to pay the YRT. And so the rate of return, if you don't get a great rate of return, you lose your insurance. And so clients don't understand that. They don't understand that if the market doesn't perform, I lose my life insurance. Yeah, you do. In this scenario, you would. Tax changes. So another thing that we look at is the I lost my. And so I think that when I look at a financial foundation, I usually use the financial foundation to sell. I want my risk on the top in my investments. I don't want the risk on the bottom in my protection, personally. Now, some clients want the risk in their protection. They think, I don't want to pay for protection. I want the market to pay for my protection. Wonderful. They're the same people. Maybe they want the renter to pay for the rental house. They want their ex-spouse to pay for the alimony. They want the company to pay for the pension. They want the government to pay for the retirement, but they don't want to pay themselves. You know, and I think it's a very poor mentality to say, if I want something, I want to pay for it. I'm okay paying. We have
Daniel, sorry, can I ask some questions before? I didn't want to interrupt your thoughts, but I don't want us to go too far before I ask this question. So number one is probably more around the illustration of missing a premium. So essentially, how did you program that premium to have it as 0 at 839 from the illustration? Did you like have to drill into the premium schedule and null that to 0?
Is there a question? How do I illustrate it?
No, like how did you at that 839? How did you illustrate it at 0? Yeah.
Oh, I go into. Can you see my IA illustrator?
Correct. Yeah, I can.
I go to here. I go to personalize.
Okay.
And then it gives me all my.
Oh, I see. Makes sense. Okay. I've not done that before. Okay. Second one is speaking to collateralizing your universal life cash value.
Yep.
I was thinking there are two options you have. One is you either decide to leave your money in equity, and the minimum, at least I'm speaking from the guideline I read about Manulife, CSV, line of credit. So if you have like some cash value in your universal life, if it's up to 500,000, and you want to leave it in the equity, you can only have access to half.
Correct.
Or if you want to move it into a guarantee environment, you must have like minimum 278,000. Then you must move it to guarantee environment, but at that point in time you have 90% access to whatever you have. So does the 500 case also require you to still move the money into a GIC?
So each lender is different. I don't have the answer. I appreciate the question. So if you're in equity, you can only borrow 50% of your cash value. And if you're in a fixed income, you can borrow more cash value. This might not answer your question, but this is my thought. If my cost of borrowing is 7% and my equity produces 7%, although I'm not borrowing from my equity, I'm borrowing against my equity from the insurance company reserve or from a bank. So this comes from a bank, not from my equity. So if my equity grows at 7% and I pay 7% of my loan, it doesn't cost me anything to borrow money. It's like having a mortgage on a rental property. The renter pays the mortgage. But if I borrow 90% and I got to pay 7%, but I'm only earning 1% here, it destroys my whole strategy because my velocity is now negative. I need to make sure I earn more than I pay. And so that's why borrowing more than 50%. The other 50% is meant to pay the cost of insurance, not meant to be leveraged out. So it's if you the best way to learn about it is to go to MFDA and search about ULs that got sued and then just read the case studies. That's what I did. And I thought, holy crap, and
Sorry, where did you say you study those cases?
go to MFDA, a mutual fund deal, or go to insurance case. Jeff just commented, if you borrow 50%, 50% has to be moved to GIC, but it depends on the lender. I'm not sure exactly what the rules are.
Okay.
So I would never borrow against equity if I'm a lender. I would only borrow against secured money, personally. And the more volatile in the market, the less that's going to be available. By the way, how do you offset this risk? If you max fund it, there's no risk because you filled it. For example, Ruth, if you can unmute for a second. Ruth has sold a max funded UL and she monitors it every year. Do you worry about that thing not being able to pay the cost of insurance, Ruth?
I do not.
It was max funded. But max funding sucks because you don't get
I
it.
do not. I know that I could stop paying right now to do that.
Yeah. Do you worry about the rate of return if you max funded it? Nope. Now, this means Ruth's client has to pay tax. Because if you max fund it, it'll go over the MTAR line and create a tax liability. Is it good to pay tax in a UL?
I pay tax every year on my UL. It's not much, but I pay tax.
Because it performed and it grew and is max funded and it earned great interest. That's scenarios too much and the government says, hey, hold back. You're cheating the system. Most of it's tax free, but a little bit is not tax free. Now, if you have a premium holiday, if it's not repaid, you lose some opportunity. We just got to rerun the illustration and say, hey, where are we at? And now there's a cash flow risk or a confusion risk. Ruth's policy she sold is likely going to last longer than her. So she's got to fill that thing up because the beneficiary in the insured is much younger than her. And so the way you solve all this stuff is you max fund it. Solves the problems. Minimum funded, the client likes minimum fund though. So taxes. Here's how taxes work. Your ACB, your adjusted cost basis, is what you bought it for. So for example, my ACB on a house is what you buy it for. So for example, if I have a house and I buy it for $100,000, well, over time, it grows to $300,000. My ACB is $100,000. Your net cost of pure insurance is your, in a house, what you capital cost, but it's your cost of insurance as per an actuary table. So if you put in $100,000 to an insurance policy, minus a little bit of insurance cost, the rest is your ACB. Your net cost of pure insurance is an actuarial number, not your actual cost. After your premium is stopped, ACB begins to deteriorate. Let me show you what this looks like. If I go to so this is the $1,000 a year at 5% plus my bonus, 5.79. You're probably paying 1.7 in fees, maybe 1.5 in fees. So you're probably sitting at the market has got to earn 8.2 to get for the client to walk away for 6. But so here I have, where's ACB? They got to show me ACB. 1 second.
Yeah, I think I saw it.
There. So here I put in $1,000. My ACB is $934. My net cost of pure insurance is $65. NCPI is the same for a $250,000 or $150,000 term, UL, whole life. ACB is the same. Every type of policy has the same ACB based on the death benefit. Now in year 2, I'm older, so my cost of insurance is more. My net cost of pure insurance goes up. It's not my cost I'm paying, but this is how tax is calculated. So after 20 years, my ACB in this far column here, once I'm into age 62, my ACB goes up by 1,000 when I deposit 1,000, but then it goes down by 1,009. So now my ACB maxes out at 16,000. If I canceled it, 32,000 is my cash value. 16,000 of it is tax-free. If you take a policy loan from the policy, 50% at age 65 would be taxable. Policy loans are taxable in the same ratio your cash value to your ACB is. So if I got twice the cash value as my ACB over here, then it's 50% taxable. I put in 29,000, but the only thing that's tax-free is 16,000 because of my tax-free. So this is does that make sense? So it's if a policy loan is taxable in the same ratio. If I go ahead, Jeff.
So why does the ACB go down?
Because the net cost of pure insurance is more than your premium. And so it really just drops like crazy if you do like a 20 pay, you pay for 20 years. When you stop paying, you have an ACB deterioration in a major way because you're not increasing the ACB, but you are NCPI never stops. And so even after age 90, NCPI is still there. In the infinite banking strategy, you can take a loan, and let's say you pay 10% interest on your loan. So if I borrow 1,000 and I pay 1,100 back, what I pay back goes to ACB. But when I pull it out, it drops my ACB. So now my interest I'm paying increases my ACB. It doesn't increase, the interest doesn't go to me, but it does go to my ACB. So the infinite banking is flawed in Canada. It doesn't work. It doesn't work better than other strategies. So it's not your first strategy. But policy loans are taxable. Anything above the ACB, if your cash value is under ACB, policy loans are all tax-free. That's why in most people's experience, policy loans are always tax-free. First 10 years, your ACB is super high. But later, it's not super high. So the government changed that in 1982. Previous to that, we were calculated the same as the states. In your LQP, you always have 1982 questions. That's why the government destroyed the UL. It just decimated it. And then they invented the tax-free savings account. And then in 2018, they took the MTAR line and they took it down by like 2/3. So they just, if you were a UL guy, they just destroyed it. They put limits on it in big ways. They don't want you avoiding tax. That's their goal. So
So sorry, Daniel, just picking up that conversation on ACB. I think it's both a function of your cumulative premium and a function of your NCPI. And if you have, like, say, some dividend received or so, I think I know, the calculation is probably something that is under the hood, but I think back to HLQP, it's more like cumulative premium minus your NCPI minus whatever maybe dividend you have taken out of it. So I'm thinking,
right, yeah.
of course, of course, if you stop paying premium, obviously you probably will have your cumulative premium stock to a value. But your NCPI, my understanding of it is the net cost of pure insurance is like the amount that is actually going to buy your like going strictly into insurance per se. So NCPI is going to increase with time. Is that correct? Because of course it depends on some other issues around eventually how your cash value do, because if your cash value, or in a UL case, if you have higher cash value, you have to buy less face value, and essentially your NCPI also may decrease. So if your account is doing very well, I'm just trying to draw a relationship. If your account is doing very well in terms of investing, your NCPI, does it really decrease or what?
So your better your account is, the less face amount you're going to have.
Correct.
So, for example, if your face amount is 110, your NCPI is based on 110.
Right. Right. So NCPI, does it increases, like, can we just say it increases with age, regardless of how your account do?
No, because the better your account does, the less insurance face amount you're purchasing.
Yeah. But then age also come into it to kind of increase it again, and I think it's some complicated interaction there. Okay.
It took me a while to learn what's ACB, what's NCPI, what do these stuff mean? It's not intuitive. It's not like human beings are meant to say, hey, what does this mean? How does this work? Let me show you this exact same thing, max funding it, and you'll see the difference. I'm just pulling up an illustration. But if I max fund it, I got to stop sharing, then it'll give me a faster share screen. So this is a $250,000 max funded. Remember we say the way you offset risk is max funding? And so here we say your cost of insurance is not your NCPI. Your NCPI is like $60 your first year, but your minimum is 400. Your maximum is 6,000. So we just pay the 6,000. So here, the client pays 6,000 a year or 5,000 and change for about 8 years. Then their maximum is decreased for a while. Then what happens is their accumulation fund grows. So when I look at the net cost of pure insurance, it continues to grow.
Yeah, so I see. I think it's
So what happens is when you overfund a policy like crazy, you actually have to buy more insurance to keep the policy on side for tax purposes. So when it performs well, instead of going offside, I have what's like an AFOA rider or something on this thing. An automatic buy more insurance rider, whatever it's called, AOFA, automatic something, phase amount. So here, if I shove in this policy in 20 years, 168,000, my face amount, I actually bought an extra 150,000 to keep it on side. So I'm actually have 300,000. So it's hard to offset that thing totally without incurring taxes. Yeah, it's not intuitive. You have to continue to run illustrations. I don't know if that helps or if that confuses you.
yeah. I mean, I think it helps. Thanks.
It confuses me. So it's we're on the home stretch. And then we'll talk about how to build. But does that make sense? How if you max fund it, it's not going to lapse. There's no chance. If you min fund it, you're like, wait a minute. So when people say UL is cheaper, I'll say cheaper than what? When I run it, it seems expensive. But so look, when we're replacing policies, you want to look at the cost of insurance. If it's term, we got to let the client know your cost is going to go up over time. And we want to look at it now and in the future. Most UL is actually a bucket of term insurance with some overfunding. That overfunding won't pay the future insurance. By the way, we don't get compensated very well to overfund a policy. We get compensated on the reference premium. So a lot of clients say, don't pay more than a lot of advisors who don't know what they're doing, just pay the reference, but the reference, it's better to max fund it. So you should order an in-force illustration. When I order one, I always tell the carrier, use your assumed rate of return. And they choose the rate of return, not me. And IA and Avari, their assumed rate of return is 1.75. That's what their company decided to use. So that's what I use too. I don't want to make things up. That's what we can guarantee, pretty close. Premium holiday is usually many times more efficient than canceling. But we should still fill out an LIRD. Because what happens is, let's say my cash value is $2,000 and my fund value is $10,000 because there's a surrender fee. I can use this fund value to pay my cost of insurance and not cancel it. And the policy stays alive, so they're covered, but they can't get all the cash value out in the first 10 years. So it's many times we can say, use the extra premium to keep the thing going if they're allowed. Different companies have different rules. Some are very flexible, some are not flexible at all. Equitable is bringing out a UL that has no surrender fee. It's a 5% surrender fee over 3 years. That's what I heard. So that changes it. When there's no surrender fee, then the client can get their money back. The client must win financially. It's got to be better for them. Emotionally, they got to feel better about it. They got to say, hey, this makes sense. And then holistically, if they're going to save less money, the worst thing we do is someone's paying, let's say, $200 for an inefficient UL, and we replace it with a $50 term. But we don't save the $150. They're better off in a UL. If we can't get them to save, a UL is better. If someone says, I don't want to save, I just want to buy insurance, make them save. You know, and so we don't want to replace something that in 20 years their term renews, they have nothing, and they didn't save any money. So the strategy has to be better, not just the product. It has to be better for them. If the client complains, and by the way, if you have a big business, clients will complain, and your friends will complain, because that's how business is. You will get judged on a peer standard. So when you go to the ombudsman or the court, they'll ask, what would a group of 100 of your peers do? Would they invest in a balance fund? Would they invest in a whatever? And so if I invest in a China equity, and they say, would 100 of my peers invested in China equity? The ombudsman would say, no, that's ridiculous. They would have used the Canadian balance fund, because 90% of things that are sold in Canada are Canadian balance funds. And so we get judged against peer standard. If I sell, if someone says I want life insurance and I talk them into a disability policy, and they ask my peers, do you sell disability first or life insurance first? 90% of my peers sell life insurance and then disability. That's what we get judged against. What would our peers do? Which is kind of vague. It's kind of like, that's why I keep notes. Tips to build. Max funded is superior to minimum funded. All the time. But the purpose of max funding is to pay the future cost. I don't think you should max fund a UL until your TFSA is full. That's my personal opinion. And I'm married, so my TFSA room is 150 grand, it's not full. And so I haven't started anything else. And I think if you make that kind of money, you should incorporate. Leave room to convert. So I want to pick a premium that in 10 years I can convert it to level. I can say, do the YRT in 10 years. I say, yeah, the market sucked, it didn't work. Let's convert it to level and just lock in your cost. In a level UL, the insurance company takes the investment risk. What they did was in the 80s, they said, insurance companies only pay like 7 to 10%, but a GIC was like 15%. A 10-year bond was 14%. So the consumer says, we want to take the risk. We can manage our own money. We go to a bank, get a 15% GIC. So the individual takes the risk. Now, if you get paid for the risk you take, it's a good thing. In my experience, most people we sell to don't understand what it means to get paid for taking risk. I prefer, when I sit down with the client, that the insurance company takes the risk. If it doesn't work, my life doesn't change. So if an insurance company doesn't work, they have a huge reserve, they can weather the storm. As an individual, I can't weather a storm. So I want someone else to take all my risk. You want to build the death benefit up to get to dime. What I mean by that is, let's say I buy a $100,000 UL. Inside here, we have X curve and whatever else inside there. Do like $1 million term in there. Make sure if they die, their lives aren't ruined. I talked to someone yesterday and I'm just looking here. Someone texted me, we were texting and she said, I wish my husband thought of it, doing a term rider or just doing pure term. But usually the problem isn't UL, it's the no big rider or too small of a policy. I wish my husband thought of it. I got 1 year's salary when he passed away, which is something, but in the midst of dealing with the crushing grief, I'm suddenly having to downsize. It's an awful time. 1 year income is not enough. We got to do 10 years income. We got to, if they're married and with kids. If they're single, it's a little bit more vague. But we got to do a term rider, and we got to build up. Our competitor over at Primerica, by the way, they're only a competitor because they don't know what they're doing, and their insurance is slightly more expensive. They always talk about buy term, invest the difference. They're not against permanent policies. They're against small policies. They're against $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 policies. If I have, I say, listen, if I paid for about 4.4 million, I wish I could buy more, I would. And they're not against a big policy. They just don't know how to fund it. They just don't want, it was started when like R. Williams' dad died and he had like a $10,000 policy and he could have bought a lot more. And so they're against not having enough coverage. They just don't articulate that because that's not very sexy. Hey, what you got to do? Your sword, when you go to war, is your software. Your computer is your sword. You can download almost all the illustrations. I can send you an email with a link to every illustration we have, and you have to learn to use it. You can use third-party software to illustrate if you're good at it, but you got to be able to say, hey, let me show you what this might look like. That's my tips. Let me show you an example of a policy I sold last week. Let me see if I have it here. So you see, no, you don't see what I see. Share screen. So here's the situation. Client has a 10-year term. They had very low cash flow. They had a $1,000 truck payment and a $1,500 tax and arrears payment and a mortgage payment and spousal payment or whatever. So he was tight for cash for about a 10-year term. That 10-year term is going to renew at a crazy rate. And this also now he has a build problem, which means he's built up too much weight on his body or he's too short. So he's too fat for his height. And then he also has medicine. He can't get insurance anymore and he's got sleep apnea. So what I can do is I can take this policy and I can go to CPP and probably get a policy around here, cheaper than his renewal. Or we can switch it to YRT and convert it to permanent. So, by the way, if we do a CPP policy, it's about $100 a month for 20 years. So here, if I do your annual charges here is $400 a month. Instead of $100 a month, divide by 10-ish. So this is a UL, YRT. Annual charges is $400 a year. For 10 years, it averages about $500 a year. The second 10 years, it averages better. So in 20 years, he averages about $700 a year. So if I buy a new policy for $100 a month, it's not as clean as buying a YRT. Now, it's not permanent. Over at Avari, you have to pay the reference premium for 5 years. You cannot take a break. They force you to overfund it. So I say, well, instead of $100 a month, you're going to pay $150 a month. And after $150 a month, you're going to save an extra $8,000. Then we're going to drop your premium to $50 a month, or you can use this money to pay that premium. After 20 years of owning a term, YRT term, you're going to have $16,000 cash value, and your cost of insurance is going to be about $100 a month. That cost of insurance, when you are 70, is going to be $500 a month. When you are 80, is going to be more, and when you are 90, it's going to be more. So your cost of insurance is going to go up and up and up. Now, I don't know if he likes to pay that kind of premium, but in the first 20 years, it's better than getting a simple issue policy. So this is a minimum funded UL. It will not last. He knows it will not last. But this is one way to put a UL in place on a conversion where he has health issues. And so the cost is less, but the premium is more. So it's kind of like a give and take.
I have a question, Daniel. So say they do get a UL and it's YRT for the first 20 years, and then they want to change it to the level after. What steps do they need to take in order for it to be in that position? Or do they need to redo it? Or do you just call the company saying, hey, I want to change it up? Like what process?
Fill out a conversion form and send it in. A policy change form and send it in. There's no medical. There's no medical to convert to this either. So even being in terrible health situation, he You can still convert to this. We just fill out a conversion form or switch it to level. You can do that later. So we talked about that too. And we said, hey, when you're sick of, when you pay off your truck and you pay off your house, convert this to level. So he said, sure. In 20 years, when he pays off his truck and his house, he'll pay off his, we'll convert it to level. Or he has some options as well.
So you just pretty much like just like fill out a form with the company? Like, is there a form that you can show me just to have a sample?
The, if I, you go to a policy change form. Can you see my internet? Like,
Yeah. Yes.
so you go to an application for change form. This is a different company, but I say this is going to be a requested change. We are going to change death benefit option to level only. Or no, we're going to change cost of insurance to level or YRT, done at original rates or whatever we're changing. And then it shows me if I did that one, I want to change, I got to fill out sections 1 to 9. If I'm switching it to this or if I'm switching it to this, depending on what I'm switching it to, then I fill out that form, sign it. So.
Okay, thank you.
It's just it's just admin stuff. The other option when I build a policy, let me show you how I.
Sorry, Daniel. I was just trying to follow that case now. Is it a case that the client already have the term 10 or the client just newly want to get a term 10?
No, they have a term 10 at Avari. So I have
Already, okay.
at Avari.
Oh, okay.
So I have to go to their options, right?
Mhm.
They have a less flexible UL than anyone else, but it's priced very well for the first 30 years. So they price it cheaper, but then they give the client less flexibility. So here's a policy. Let's say I'm doing a policy on a 35-year-old male, and we would add a rider to say, actually, let me get rid of this. You guys can see my quoting software, correct? I'm out of time right away, but let's say I'm doing, you can drop this to 25 grand. And now my monthly minimum premium is 16 bucks. They want me to pay 30, but I'm allowed to pay 184. So then I add a rider for a 20-year term. Let's say they need $500,000. I would say, okay, we're going to do 475. 475 and 20-year term. My term costs me 30 bucks. And then I can choose what I want to pay. So instead of paying the recommended 80 bucks, I can pay 100 bucks. So
do you mean 25,000 for the UL or 50,000 for the UL?
Yeah, I'm max funding my UL and getting a term.
Yeah, I was thinking you want to round it out to 500,000. That should be 25, right?
Yeah, either way, that's how I build it. So the UL max funded because most of it is term. So that's how I would build it. I know I'm out of time, but that's how I allow my term. That's why I allow my UL to be max funded by changing the cost of insurance to term. So, any questions over what we did? By the way, most clients don't. If you guys are confused and you guys are in the industry, the client has no frigging clue what they're buying. No frigging clue, because you guys are the experts. Carol, can you make a comment on selling YRT? You know, the idea of what you like to sell and that the idea of it's guaranteed and never going to collapse. What are your thoughts on that, Carol?
Daniel, sorry again, what's your question?
What are your thoughts on selling guaranteed policies that will guarantee to pay out, or selling policies that are kind of willy-nilly and they might or might not work?
Yeah, I really prefer to sell guaranteed policy because let's face it, even myself, I don't even know how long will I stay in the business. That's the first one. What if, I don't know, because I believe that my commitment to my client is lifetime because they trust me. But what if that's the first? Second is, uh, at this time, as you mentioned to us, right? I the one if they will access the cash value, it will go to the GIC. So I want to make sure that what I present to my client will be the same until the end of their policy.
Yeah.
That's my commitment to them.
Let me show you a quick chart here, which scares me. A lot of people say you can get a bigger rate of return. And then I got someone at the door right away, but this is the chances of a pension falling apart. If I recommend the pension's going to be at 4%, some of these are going to fail. So give me 1 second. Someone's just at my door. I got to take it. Thanks for being patient. Any questions before we take off? Shanaz, what do you think? I know we haven't chatted a whole lot about UL, but what are your thoughts about today?
I love what you said about the risks, but here's the thing that I love whole life, but when it comes to the affordability, whole life is really expensive for the client. So the same policy that we could just protect the client with universal life, more than that, maybe I could say that even triple times of the premium that we have in UL, they have to pay for the whole life. So the affordability is my concern for the client, and mostly what I do, I love what you said by overfunded. So mostly I'll explain it to the client and I ask to overfund it, so in that case I'll decrease the risk of lapsing the policy. And when I'm explaining the universal life, always I know that my license would be at risk because of the market and all the things that you explained it clearly. So mostly I explain it in a summary that I have. I explained that the policy was run by that interest rate, and it depends on the market risk. So, but the affordability is my concern for the client. So I want my clients have being insured, but in a policy which is affordable.
Right. And so a UL max funded is more expensive than a whole life, but a UL minimum funded will not last. So it's kind of like a balance, right? Of one of the things I've looked at is the cost of insurance. Let me just show you an example. I think it's a great, by the way, there is no right product. The right product is the one the client understands, they buy and they keep. You have to know how this stuff works if you're going to run a big team.
Right.
Now, if it's going to be a onesie twosie, one policy a month kind of person, you don't need to know much. You just got to go talk to lots of people. But if a client wants to know, you got to explain it. I think the cost of insurance inside a UL, it's cheaper to buy term. If I'm just going to say I want to buy cost of insurance and invest, term and TFSA will beat it. Unless your overfunding is less than $100. So if you overfund less than $100, you can't buy 2 mutual funds for $90. Your minimum in a mutual fund is $50. You can't buy 2 funds, and so you can't even do a balanced portfolio unless you take 1 fund. And so in a UL, anything under $100 is fair game because you can't do that in a TFSA and actually survive in business. Where I can't do a $30 pack plan, but I can add $30 to a UL, or I take a term, add a $30 UL, whatever it is, and build it up. So, but everyone should take good notes. Everyone should know what they're selling, and it should be the advice is between the professional and the client. And I'm not against UL. I'm against confusion. And usually, what I see in the marketplace is those who have money know how it works, and they like it. Those who don't have money don't know how it works, and they think it's a pension plan. And it's not a pension plan. I'm just pulling up a cost of insurance, but any other comments before we take off?
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, I used to think the same way before, that whole life is expensive, but I think my views about it are changing a little bit now. Especially if yesterday I illustrated for a client. I think if the client really know what UL can become in terms of the downsides, it really make them to detach a little bit from emotion. Although it's difficult to explain to some client though, because they don't even really have that interest to understand. But I had a client that's really detailed, asking good questions, and by the time I explained, he just wanted to go for whole life. I was able to illustrate $157, $1 million coverage, most of it although being term, but you understand the chances of converting the whole life the term into whole life and everything. And when I did the math, looking at what he's paying for his term compared to other, even up to Empire Life, because whole life does not have that policy fee, that term in the whole life was more competitive because it was cheaper. And the second of it all is that it could see that the portion of the premium going into the whole life would be converted back to a cash value. I think it makes sense if you really explain it and you layer it appropriately. And I think you would probably do the good job of covering the client appropriately and opening up the conversation of later on in the future, converting it to whole life and taking advantage of EDO, right? So that's just my...
Yeah, no, I think level UL competes with whole life, and YRT UL competes with term and TFSA. So we got to compete with the 2 different places. Here's the rate of returns that clients are going to get in the future. This is a hypothetical 5.45% rate of return. The client's taking 5% withdrawal out in retirement, but in the UL, you do it for cost of insurance. You have a sequence of return risk that's destructive. And but the actual rate of return, a Monte Carlo report shows you the probability of getting this return. And in actuality, depending when your clients invest, this is the rate of return. If you had 100 clients, this would be the 100 different results your clients would get. Now, if I draw on this, give me a second here. These clients here, their policy is going to lapse. And if you take good notes, you got no problem. But those clients are lapsed, and their premium's gone and their death benefit's gone too. These clients don't know they took any risk, and these clients think you're a great advisor. But that's the reality of the returns the clients are going to get. Not all clients are going to get great returns. This is the market can be wrong longer than anybody can be solvent. I worry about this. What if it, what if the fund doesn't work or whatever? So no, happy studying. But this is the last thing I'll show, and then this shows here. Remember I showed you earlier the different returns? Under here, I can do a term. So I can say, hey, we're not going to do the T to 100. We're not going to do the level. I can show the YRT costs $1,200 a year. The UL costs $1,200 a year. The term costs $324. This is minimum payment on $1 million. So $1 million term is $324 reissued. So they just do a medical and get a new one every 10 years. And then after 9 years, the UL is $1,400. The term is $324. Then the term, you get a new term for $442. The UL is $1,000 more. Now the UL is $1,500 more. Then you get a new term for $1,000. The UL is $1,500 a year more. So the UL is more money in every case. At age 60, the 10-year term is $1,000, and then it renews to $3,500, but the UL is at $4,500. And so unless you max fund a UL, a term will kill it. Now at age 80, the UL is $2,000 a month, and the term is only $1,000 a month. At age 81, the UL starts to win. But we can compare the costs of what you would actually pay in cost. The YRT, you would pay on a level you'd pay $163,000 in term for $1 million, but in UL you'd pay $250,000 to $300,000. So the cost of insurance is too much for me. Why don't I do a 10-year term and then in year 10 switch it to YRT if I can't renew it? It's the most efficient, but it doesn't pay you the most. Just like when you go to a doctor, you don't want your doctor to get rich off you. You want your doctor to get rich off other patients, and give you the good advice. And we want to be good doctors and make sure what we sell, I think, is the best in the marketplace. My persistency is high 99.5 percentages. And I cannot think of a client that's ever replaced my stuff. I got one client who was from Bosnia, and their friend from Bosnia got licensed, and I lost the policy due to a Bosnian friend of a Bosnian client. Jeff, can you talk real briefly about how many of your clients get replaced?
I've only really remember one policy ever getting replaced because I sold the client a term, limited budget, whole bunch of credit card debt. The plan was to get them debt free and then look at other options. And the client had a friend join the industry, and they used would you rather be renting a house or buying a house? And the guy said, well, buying a house. They said, well, you need permanent. And so he switched his term from us to a different company with permanent. It was actually a Sun Life policy. And that was the only policy I remember losing over that.
So meaning you never get chargebacks. I heard someone say chargebacks are the part of the business. And I said, what the hell are you talking about? I don't get my money rescinded, just so you guys know. My points are like government coupons. They do not get charged back.
Our entire hierarchy over the past 12 months, the persistency rate is 98%. And that includes us replacing, like if I sold a 20-year term 5 years ago and the new 20-year term is cheaper, I'm going to do that because it's better for the client. That includes that number, right? So we don't lose policies, really. We don't get chargebacks. It's possible. I mean, there's divorces, there's separations, there's things, but as a general rule, when I put something on the books, it stays there.
I don't know about everyone else hierarchy, but a 98% for 50 licenses is pretty fair. And by the way, if I get a chargeback, the client loses all their premium. So I get hurt and the client gets hurt. And so we can't have clients get hurt. And the main thing is to explain it very clearly of what's going on. Equitable has some great disclosures. If you sell a UL, there's like a 10-page questionnaire of all the risks. I go through that and say, hey, here's all the risks. If a client does IRP and they have bad credit age 65, they can't get a loan. Who's going to borrow someone a loan without a job? Who's going to borrow, let's say you wanted to remortgage your house and you're 66 and you're retired and you don't have a job. Nobody's going to give you a mortgage. Nobody's going to give you a policy loan if you don't have a job to repay it. So there's a credit risk that clients can't use that for retirement unless they have a lot of business income. So any last questions before we take off? I think it's helpful to go through this stuff. Are you guys, is this clearer or more confusing? That's my main concern. Is it, or are you more confident or more worried? I don't know which way, which is the proper way, but what are your thoughts, Sharon? Does this help understand, or you can close out, Sharon? Well, last comment.
Yeah, definitely. I understand it so much better, but I'm curious about the percentage though. You said you usually use IA's 1.75%.
Oh, when I'm ordering illustrations from the insurance company. So if I find a policy, I say, let's order an illustration. I just say to the client, can you email IA and say, can you send me an in-force illustration at your recommended rates? They use 1.75. That's what they recommend. And on all the brochures, they also use 1.75. But they want to make sure it lasts. They want to make sure this will make it. You will not outlive the policy. When I run it, I usually run it at 3 or 5. I say, here's 5, here's 3. And if we get better, that's good, but insurance is insurance, investments is investments. All my clients who are retired, I know some people in real estate that have done well with whole life. I know some people that have done well with TFSA RSP. I've never met someone that's retired on a UL. And I talk to a lot of people. So I just never met one. So maybe it works. I don't know.
It's great info, Daniel. Appreciate that so much. I got an 11 o'clock appointment. I got to run. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.